Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. I don't think I'm going to do a long show tonight. I just wanted to pop on so you don't think I'm taking a long hiatus. I've just been a little bit busy. Um, so I'm officially a resident of Costa Rica. Everything was sorted today at the immigration office in Limon. My I went with my wife, Rosemary, and my stepson Tony, and his girlfriend Nicole. And Nicole speaks English, so it was quite a little bit of an ordeal, though. Some pure Latin American. It was weird. I don't want to get into it, but it was weird. But anyways, everything got worked out. I don't actually have my cedula yet, my ID card, but I have a piece of paper with my cedula number on it, and I can start looking for work in Costa Rica. I do not have to leave anymore. Um, and I can't begin to tell you the security I feel having this residency secured. And I feel Costa Rican now, I really do. So I guess essentially I'm a dual citizen now. I don't have my citizenship here yet, but um, residency is the same thing. So, I mean, it's a fantastic feeling. The timing could not be better. I can do everything a Costa Rican can do with residency. I can manage my own company now and everything. Excuse me. And you know, I don't know what to say. It's just a fantastic feeling. Got the windows in on the house. The doors are coming in. I think, what is it today? Wednesday. I think they're coming in on Friday. And the main entrance door is a double door. It's a extra. It's going to be a nice house when the drop ceiling's in and everything. So really happy with everything, the way everything turned out. I feel blessed. I don't know how else to say it. I feel blessed. Now that said, I want to have a quick chat tonight about a topic that's been on my mind a lot lately. You know what it is? It's our friends who uh, claim to be the chosen people of God. Um, I want to have a very nice talk about this for a short spell. I have to get to bed soon. I'm just beat. And it's only 9:21. I usually go to bed at like 12:30 or 1:30, but up a bit earlier today. Okay. So, I think the number one thing is that it's really important that people don't regard this phenomenon in a religious context. Okay? I think the best way to look upon it is fairly and justly and not to bring any judgment to people. I mean, I've said quite a few things. I've put some things down on paper. Blackbird Talmud, Devil in Us. Um, but I don't see the world in the good and evil binary the way religious people do. I can. It's part of my ancestral memory and my family imprint in this lifetime. I can fake it as well as the next guy. I can act Bruce McDonald as, Jim Carrey said when he grew out of himself and called his own persona Jim Carrey an actor he was playing. Very insightful statement, by the way. Um, but generally, I don't think about the world in that way when it comes to critical thinking and my own decision making. I'll pantomime in a conversation if I'm talking to somebody and I don't want to be rude. Some people you just can't say, "Hey, look, there's really no such thing as good and evil. It's a human construct." They don't have the consciousness. They can't imagine an evolving consciousness in physical form on this planet for tens of millions of years. It's outside most people's concepts. But that's how long we've been here. Many of well, even longer. That's another story. Um, I want you to think about this very maturely. So the question becomes, how do you know when you have found, how do I put this? How do you know when you've hit sort of the ultimate realization of human consciousness, which is immersion with the creator of life, all time, all space, everything, thought, feeling, creator of all of it? How do you know? And what are you defining as your creator? Is it the creator of the human being? Oh, we've been all over this. It's basically extraterrestrials. Whether you call them Elohim, whether you call them angels. I mean, we've been over this so many ways now when I think about the totality of my work, written and on the podcast. I've recommended Pierre Sabec a number of times. He basic he basically is a master, a kind of Bobby Fischer level genius when it comes to linguistics. Um, and basically correlated all of these names, cherubim and seraphim and everything. They're basically, it's a coded name for the Orion extraterrestrials, basically. Hey, buddy, podcasting. Still not ready. There's two lighters in the plastic bag. No, that's the new Vic. They have a few. Buddy wanted to come in. He was sitting at the door. Okay, thank you. It's my Canadian son. I'm Costa Rican now. My foreign son. Okay, so let's get back on track here. So Sabic maps all this out, okay? And so we have to begin to recognize that when these disclosures are made to us, that the principle of alchemizing what is a shock to the system. Okay, so it's a shock to the system, you know? That's why, what did Cliff call it again? What was yesterday's podcast? Let me check here. The I can't remember. Hang on a sec. Dark hypothesis, yeah. So it's really not that dark. Okay, it's really not that dark, which is why I titled the podcast The Dark Hypothesis Coloring Book. And if you see it as really dark, what it means is that you identify with your body. You believe, no matter what you say your consciousness is, and there's many tells like this. Okay, so a lot of people will talk big game, you know, expanded consciousness, remote viewing, and all of these sorts of things, right? And I'm not referring to Cliff here. Cliff gets it, which is why he can talk about it like a coloring book too. Um, you shouldn't be shocked by these things, okay? You just should not be shocked by them. And if you are shocked by them, then you should use that as a Gautama Siddhartha moment. Okay? I usually talk about the Gospels, but Buddha's a better example tonight. So the story of the Buddha has been told many times. I'll just briefly recapitulate. Is that the word? I don't know. Repeat the story very quickly, a very short version of it. So the human that would go on to become what we call the Buddha was born Gautama Siddhartha, and he was born the son of the royal family in his region of India about 26 or 2500 years ago. Yeah, hang on a sec. That's really interesting because it might actually mirror um, the second temple of Solomon might have gone up the same time Buddha incarnated. Okay. What period did the Buddha live on the earth? Slow. I don't know why. I've got the okay. So the sixth, he lived for 80 years during the 6th and 5th centuries BCE or slightly later. So that would have been precisely around the time the second temple was built. The first temple was about 900 BC. That was Solomon, and the rebuilding of the temple was about 500 BC. So that's when the Buddha comes in. That's interesting. It's the first time I've ever made that connection. You see this kind of threading in time often in spiritual matters. The 12th century is another big time for this. The seal of the saints in Islam is a fellow by the name of Ibn Arabi. I've mentioned him. Well worth reading for any serious student of spirituality. You don't have to be Muslim. It's a universal teaching, Ibn Arabi. He was ultimately killed by imams, not for being heretical, but for he was walking by a mosque one day, and he went over. It's kind of like a Jesus turning the tables in the temple moment. He went over and said, because he was told inwardly, he went over and said, "Why do you wear the robes of an imam? Why do you pretend to be servants of the prophet? You worship what's under my feet." And it turns out that the imams had been robbing, and they had a bunch of gold buried under the mosque. So they killed him for that, and then and this was somewhere in Turkey. This mosque, and they were doing renovations on it in the late 20th century, like the 90s, like in my lifetime. And they dug down with a backhoe, and the gold that Ibn Arabi said was there, or which was part of the lore, was actually there. Anyways, so you get Ibn Arabi, you get Milarepa in Tibet, one of their great figures. Not the Dalai Lama, but a major figure in Tibetan mysticism and the Tibetan system. So Gautama Siddhartha was born the son of the royal family of his province or kingdom in India. Okay? And it wasn't until he was almost a man, a teenager, that he left the walled compound of the palace, which was huge. There would be wild animals in there. It would be like like a gated city almost. That's how the best way to describe the palace. There was really no reason for him to leave. But one day he left in a cart and he passed people that were suffering. And the suffering hit him the way I think Cliff was expecting the dark hypothesis to hit most readers, which is why he gave the caution. But the visage of that suffering was so moving and affecting to Gautama Siddhartha that he decided he had to find the cause of human suffering. We know poverty, whatever. And so that's how the Buddha began his long meditation. And around the time the Buddha came, there was also a lot of blood sacrifice in the Hindu religions in India. I mean, the Vedics were there, but the main religion, the main Hindu religion, was a lot of animal sacrifice, just like most other religious culture at that time, universally, okay, globally. So that's a very interesting thing to remember when you think about the Christ. He came to end the bloodletting, at least the bloodletting of human beings, but even animals. So my point is that Gautama Buddha internalized all of this suffering and said, and he basically alchemized it, used it as an energetic source, and through his sincerity to finish the process that began by witnessing that suffering, which is coming to an understanding of what causes suffering. And that's the story of the Buddha. And as all of these things are coming forward now, and I've been huge in bringing these things forward, not in terms of the volume of people I've reached, although I think it's significant. I think it is quite significant. I mean, my son and I were in here tonight and we were on the Kindle Direct Publishing website. It keeps all your stats in eternity. And so I looked up my sales on Stardust Ranch. And it's, about 3,200 books and then about 1,200 audiobooks. Now, I want you to remember that you're going to end up on the New York Times bestseller list if you sell 5,000 copies of a book. Okay? That's a true story. People think that because something's on the New York Times bestseller list, oh, that probably sold 1 million copies. Honestly, maybe that was true in 1985. Books were still a thing. I mean, you could meet girls because you read books. So people are going to read, guys are going to read, right? It's like that scene in Good Will Hunting, how do you like them apples? So reading was still going on then, but now, man, there are times I think the publishing industry is money laundering for the Democratic Party. you know, there's no way the publishing industry made its $8 million advance to Barack Obama back, or the $8 million advance to Michelle Obama. Do you really think that the black community is buying her book? Do you think that the black community that's living in Detroit or Philadelphia, living at a substandard level of living, you know, do you think they're buying that book? Do you think there's that many guilty white women that could justify an $8 million advance? Because when you're the author of a book, if the book sells for like, let's say $34.95 hardcover, the author might get $1 from every book. It's a much better deal on Amazon, actually. So I think it's money laundering. But, anyways, I digress. I'm talking about our Hebrew brothers and sisters, and I'm talking about how this environment we live in can create patterns in people almost to the point where it's like an artificial intelligence. And this is what's happened to Jewish culture. Okay. Now, the reason it's important not to look at things in the context of good and evil is you're going to get very angry because human nature is to destroy evil. But by destroying something, you become evil. I know. That don't make no sense, Bruce. That's the sound of one hand clapping. How do you survive? Well, you have to believe. You have to believe everything's going to be okay. And when you know it isn't, get out of harm's way. So recognizing harm coming toward you is a big sign of consciousness as well, right? So you don't want to get angry at this point in history. You don't want to see anything malignant in our Jewish brothers and sisters. They're involved in, how would I describe this? Think of God as a completely blank canvas that doesn't exist. The canvas doesn't exist. The space to put the canvas doesn't even exist yet. The atoms and molecules to form the space and the canvas don't exist yet. Time doesn't exist yet. The feeling of the canvas doesn't exist yet. No memory of the canvas because it hasn't been created. And no concept of the canvas even exists yet in anything's mind, an individual human, because they would be fitting into the same space as the canvas, nor in the mind of God does the concept of the canvas even exist. So there's nothing, absolutely nothing. It's a place that has no light, but it's not dark, and has no sound, but it's not silent. That's the contradiction. And we come into this space and we start to work with it individually and collectively. We literally start to mold it. And as things get molded, you begin to have generational imprinting. This forms culture. If the culture you have is visited by multidimensional phenomenon, the paranormal, the supernatural, the miraculous, those are religious words. Really, in scientific terms, anomalies in the time-space continuum. Simply put, anomalies in the time-space continuum. Things that shouldn't be able to happen, right? Like if you're walking on a path one day out in Colorado and you see a 2-ton boulder levitating, that's not supposed to happen. There's either a very bizarre phenomenon going on there, but very often we would interpret it supernaturally. Especially if 1 or 2 or 3 or a group of people were able to start levitating rocks. Then it would go from the supernatural to the natural because it becomes normative. It's just non-normative to us now. And as we work through this and we begin to create reality, because that's what a soul does, it co-creates a reality with the creator. You know, the creator is the creator and sustainer of what ultimately becomes the canvas we paint our culture or we write our culture onto, the paper we write our culture onto. And we, as the individual incarnate particulates of the creator, we're like the nanotech level. We come in and do all the fine details and shape a micro reality inside the macro reality. And over time, what happens is something that was invented to create detachment and realignment with the state before the canvas existed, which is beautiful in and of itself. And it's the relief we're seeking. It's what Buddha was seeking and found. It's what we're seeking. That's the closest definition I can give you to God. When rules start coming into play, 613 or otherwise, the whole game breaks down. And it's a game down here. And the game, well, not so much a game. I see it similar to John Edmonds. I see it as a garden, but I don't see it as a genetic hothouse, the negative interpretation that he had. My interpretation is that this is a garden for consciousness. And an incarnation is like a stem and a bulb. And if the orchid blooms, you finish the human mission down here. And if it doesn't, well, you go back into cycle and grow from the deep, dark earth again until you're another orchid. Maybe not the best metaphor, but they take a while to bloom, orchids. Um, and that's really what's going on down here. Now, when I say there's no such thing as right or wrong, you may say, well, where does the morale? How do we have anything approximating a civilization, Bruce? Not everybody's enlightened, you know? Well, what's going on now? What happened to Gautama Siddhartha? Shock therapy, right? But it did change them. So the best catalyst of change is reality. And if you don't change, you die. But you deserve to die because the catalyst for the change that was necessary in you to grow spiritually was rejected by the malignant personality. So you die. Or you accept the challenge and you grow and you bloom. You become the orchid, the flowered orchid. This is all that's going on now. And in this proper context, we see our Hebrew brothers and sisters who've become attached to a concept of themselves and their role in humanity to the detriment of their own well-being. And they're not going to change. They're not they can't get back to the time before the canvas because they're in love with the canvas because they wrote it, right? It's that simple. There have been rewrites. The Vatican is a rewrite of the Hebraic canvas, the Hebraic scroll. Islam is a rewrite of the Judaic and Christian scrolls, but the original is the Torah. And yes, I'm the guy that wrote the Jordan Maxwell book. You don't have to say, but Bruce, they just gathered it up from a whole bunch of other cultures. It's a sun cult. It's this, it's that. All those things are true. But it's working for them. They've got the best patent on the planet now. They've got the best reality patent on the planet. And that's what the Torah is. It's a reality patent. And Noahide law is patent enforcement. But that's not the way the Creator made this place. And so they're sinning. But for them to be seen to be sinning by the Creator has to be told by the people incarnate through a sincere heart, hey, they're sinning. They're taking my ability to enjoy and grow in this reality away, which is why you created this multi-level hologram. Okay? They're not playing by the rules. Now, to some people, that might sound like the devil's own blasphemy. There might be some people who hear this podcast and go, I swear to God, I'm listening to the devil. Who could say these things? Hi, I'm Bruce McDonald. Nice to meet you. Costa Rican resident. That's who could say these things. Because I know the difference. And my proof that I know the difference is I mean no ill will towards our Hebrew brothers and sisters. This reality is going to accommodate all of us because ultimately there's a rule set here and yours is not right. The best way to learn down here, so if you're having difficulty figuring me out, I think a lot of you get me. I can tell by the comments. But for some people it's difficult to get me. They don't get it. They don't get what I'm saying. But what it is simply is the game or the process that I described to you. Okay? So the morality comes in because as you suffer, you understand what suffering is. And you don't necessarily want to pass suffering on. Okay? And when there's real consequence in life, people learn. So I'll tell you a story that just is going on right now in my life. Well, there's a family I know. I've known them since I came to this mountain. They live partly on this mountain and partly in the villages down on the plains. They're scattered around a little bit, but they're very well represented on the mountain. I've spoken about them on this podcast before. The gentleman who can call the birds to his hand is one of the elders of that family. His sister died today. She died of cirrhosis of the liver. She was a vicious alcoholic. She would look for stuff under the kitchen sink to drink if she had no booze. She hospitalized herself, poisoning herself several occasions. Stomach pump, drinking, I don't know, something that had a little bit of alcohol or the effect of alcohol, but is normally regarded as a home cleaning product. I don't know what it was. I just heard the story secondhand in Spanish. Now, how are you supposed to feel about that? Everything in this person's life would have told her to stop drinking. And the ultimate guardrail is your life. Now, I would posit to you that if that can't wake you up, if that can't get you to stop, then it's clear that you don't want to live. If your only reason for living is to get right royally, completely wasted, drunk every day, to the point that you can't withdraw without severe detox, DTs, hallucinations, then I guess you don't deserve to live. I don't know. Do you find that to be hard ass? I don't. And that's the population control right there. Okay, so there's too many people on the planet. Well, how about we let the people who don't want to live go? Why do you got to vaccinate everybody? There's a natural process going on here. And all natural processes are the least karma generating for the society because they're natural processes. They operate independent of human will. Nobody has to say, hey, that person's drinking every day, kill them. No, they're killing themselves. It's a natural process. And I'm not saying that you don't try 100 times. Please stop drinking. Hey, do you know what's going? Hey, you almost died, but you're just coming back to consciousness in the hospital. Do you remember you drank the Pine Sol under the sink? I mean, you try your best, but at a certain point, you just wipe your hands. Okay? Now, how does this philosophy pan out globally? Well, it would certainly affect foreign aid. I don't think if a people can't grow their own food, why give them food? How are you serving the natural process by doing that? right? By the way, I'm giving you a more spiritually mature perspective on these things. I'm probably, what I'm saying to you right now is probably in complete agreement with the rabbis. I'll bet you I could sit down with Chabad Lubavitch rabbis right now and they'd all nod their head and go, yeah, this guy's telling the truth. How did he figure this out? Because it's natural. I'm very natural. I'm Tuatha elemental people. Natural is always right. The soul didn't want to take root in this life and produce anything. And the longer it stays alive in repetitious, deleterious, negative pattern, the more negative karma it's creating. And most of it's creating unconscious because it's drunk all the time. But you're still responsible for your actions. Just like you're responsible for your actions when you channel and something comes through you and affects reality. You're responsible for the thing that came through you because you're the agency, you're the body. Same thing with the alcoholism. We'd have no problems at all. And now, here's the one caveat. People should be given the resources to exist in the manner they exist. So if there are peoples on the planet who haven't learned agriculture yet and are still hunter-gatherers, like certain sections of Africa and Papua New Guinea and other parts of the world, I think that to take their land away and their expression within the blank canvas, okay? That's their creation. They're working as a tribe, as a group, their connection with this reality, its mythology and everything. They're growing. You know, they're the tulip bulb. They haven't bloomed into self-realization yet, but they're in the game and they're playing it correctly according to the creator's rules. If you take away the context in which they exist, that's a sin. And we've done that in our mentality, which was largely, again, this is a largely Judaic mentality. And this is why people have such enmity towards them now. Because they're an extremely imbalanced people who believe they have the right through proxy, because they always do it by, remember, they're just getting Israel now, and you're seeing who they really are. They're going to take that whole region. They're going to go from Egypt. They're, you know, if you think they're done, you're crazy. They're the Jews, man. God chose them. So that's the pathology. They've been caught. They've been trapped in the pathology of their own creation. But it's object. Okay? It speaks back to them. Okay? That's not to say that there aren't elements of verifiable object imagination, like real object beings and entities they're interacting with. There absolutely are. That's in many ways what the Kabbalah is about, which is why you never hear Kabbalists talking about UFOs. Go on YouTube, see if you can, the Kabbalah of UFOs, see if you find anything. You won't, because they know what those things really are. It's just part of the fourth dimension, the astral plane. Okay? Now, whether they can project into the physical and manifest in 3D depends on where they came from to get into the fourth dimension, resonating as the launching space for the physical 3D reality we live on in this planet. And even on the astral, there's concepts of time and space, right? So there's far away, there's close, and generally when you die, you stay close to the planet and boom, you come back, right? So largely, their system is an egregor now, or egregore. I never know what the correct spelling of that is. Now, I don't have a whole lot of time or patience to define that tonight. Um, I did in an earlier show, but it it's something created from 3D through the collective consciousness of a people And the more generational energy that's given to it, the more potent it becomes. Um, so there's a Christian egregor, there's a Jewish egregor, there are Muslim egregors, okay? And they're created by us, right? So this is what happens when you get trapped in your own reality, which another reason, and I have to keep repeating this, but this is another reason that the practice of meditation is so important because it's like cleaning the deepest parts of yourself and getting rid of things that you don't need anymore so you can see clearly. And also having your supernatural experiences so you know what's real and not real in the non physical, or what's actually part of the creation as a sentient object, external force or being, and the creations of your own imagination. And this is what the closing out of the age of Pisces is about. It's sort of replumbing everything at this level. And the whole concept of good and evil is going to go away. And the whole concept of life and death is going to go away. I mean, when you think about it, and I don't know why they never get called out on this more often about how ridiculous their religion is. We can mock the Muslims as primitive and stupid. We can mock the Christians as sentimental and stupid because there's no real salvation doctrine and all of this. You can do all those things, and atheists do it all the time. But atheists, even like Hawking's and Christopher Hitchens, they sort of left the Jews alone. Did you notice that? Why? I mean, these are people that believe everybody who's ever lived on the earth is going to be bodily, physically, bodily resurrected. Doesn't matter whether they were cremated. This would include all the Japanese blown up in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's fucking ludicrous. Or it's a metaphor for something else, is that they're going to be genetically recreated, right? That could be the possibility, but that's not really a resurrection. That's just a cloning, right? So the world is basically catching on now, and it has to do with all the information. There's lots of people out there like me now that are what I would call globally spiritually literate. People who have had the same fascination as me with scriptures and figures in history representing a unique state of human being in existence that was worth preserving and worth studying in the present day. Who were they? What did they say? How do we know there was something different about these people? You know, stuff like that. And everybody would be coming to the same conclusion because it's spirituality at the end of the day is a science like anything else. It's not all physically manifest. A lot of it is on the interior, sort of conceptual, like calculus in a sense, but still real. And everybody's coming to the same conclusion that we're living in this, what was originally a blank canvas, and the way we think and feel about things is maybe not right. Maybe it's been overly conditioned or controlled by what are essentially programs, you know? Now, this doesn't mean, now, some people come to this awareness and they go nuts. They, they want to chop their dick off. They want to be, you know, they want to go from Ellen Page to Elliot Page, from beautiful to hideous, by the way. Okay. I mean, you look at her, you look at it, whatever it is now. I don't mean to be disrespectful. Okay. Let's say him, Elliot Page. Okay. Because that's what he prefers, and I don't want to hurt his feelings. And for no other reason than that. But I generally don't like the perversion of the language. You take something that was beautiful and you make it ugly. Why? So what I'm saying is it applies generally to consciousness. It doesn't mean that the physical architecture, like you probably better off, whatever this is, genetic construction, whatever it you're better off trying to find a harmony with it. And that harmony is probably what aligns with nature. The way my cats keep reproducing, the way the cows birth up here on the mountain, the way the pigs birth, the way the chicken produce eggs. And if the egg has been fertilized by a rooster, you get chicks, right? Why not fit into that? I mean, it, to try to express your consciousness in an aberrant way that destroys the natural at the physical level is the very definition of preternatural. Okay, it's evil. And so you've got natural, preternatural, and supernatural. And there is something to the form, whatever it is, even if it is the dark hypothesis is probably true. But for consciousness to grow inside this cocoon, it's better to let the cocoon do its job. Okay? Don't fight it. Stay within sort of natural boundaries. So, all I'm trying to do tonight is give a perspective in which you can digest the truth and still love everybody. Chabad Lubavitch, the Sanhedrin, everybody. Just love them. Okay? Now, how do you. But, Bruce, they're trying to. I know. First of all, become aware of it. Don't participate. Don't ingest the evil. Don't promote the evil. Don't participate in any way, shape, or form. Be a conscientious objector. I want you to remember the entire process of the pandemic, how they did not physically apprehend people and force them to take the vaccine. Why do you think that is? I would say to you, it's prima facie evidence. There are forces in the game, the hologram, the blank canvas, or what existed before the blank canvas. There are forces in the game that cause them hesitation, caution, and consideration. You might say God. In a sense, they're telling us there is a God. Okay? So that's an example of this alchemical process I constantly talk about. Looking at something extremely negative and saying, whoa, hold on a sec. That's a tacit admission that. So you turn it into something positive. This great binary we've been living in has to end without an explosion. But how do you dissipate a binary system without detonating it, without destroying it? Well, the only other way I can think of is a sufficient number of people becoming the orchid, blooming and seeing it, having the awareness to see it. Whatever this is, no belief, no book, no program is worth destroying the collective experience for future generations. It is the height of arrogance and could only be undertaken by people who truly believed they were commissioned by the highest authority to do this. Truly believed being the most important two words in that last statement. The fact that they truly believe it doesn't mean it's right. They doesn't mean they have the right to destroy the collective reality of humanity because they don't get their way. This has been a very well-rounded podcast. I gave my best definition ever of the harmonics of society and how to deal with it naturally, right? If somebody wants to die, let them die. Don't, euthanasia is ugly? Sure, I agree with you 100%. It's very ugly. Not your life, not your free will. Let them go if they want to go. Let them go. You have to have meaning and purpose to be here at this day and age. If you don't have meaning and purpose, it's going to be very difficult to make it. Meaning and purpose are what root you to this earthly experience. I'm rooted because I want the nutrients of the incarnation to feed the stem and bloom the orchid. That's my meaning. What's yours? So I hope this has been of some service. I really didn't think I was going to talk that long tonight. I was just going to say I got residents, talk for 15 minutes and bow out. But this stuff just popped in my head, as it's wont to do. All right, I'm going to call this podcast The Binary Termination. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.